Panthers upset the Cowboys. Touchdown, KC.
I hate niggas, I hate niggas, I hate niggas, I hate niggas, I hate niggas.
I think it's safe to say, as we're talking about what we learned from this NFL Week 6, recapping the NFL Week 6, there's no team that is truly the best in the league right now. I thought it was the Lions, and then we saw that performance on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs, where the Chiefs still showed teams in the league that they're going to be in the mix. You're going to have to knock them off. We thought the Eagles were on that level, and then they lost their second consecutive game, losing to the Giants 4 days after losing to the Broncos. The Colts look nice. They're 5-1, but if you look at their schedule and the teams that they played against, and this is no slight to them because they're playing way better than a lot of people expected them to, but I think it's still premature to say that the Colts are the best team in the league. The Buccaneers, if any team deserves to potentially be ranked as the best right now, you can make the argument that it's them, especially with the level that Baker Mayfield is playing. But regardless, I say all that to say, man, is that the parity in the NFL is at an all-time high right now, and it's beautiful because, if anything, this is what you want from a league, to be unpredictable. You don't want it to be going into the season, oh, you already know that this team is going to win. This is going to be the Super Bowl matchup and things of that nature as well, too. That's just a great thing when you know that any team can win, and there's not necessarily that big of a gap between Super Bowl contenders, playoff contenders, and teams of that nature, too, because there's upsets happening all over the league every single week. I mean, you can look at the matchup between the Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys, where I still believe the Cowboys have a lot to prove in terms of them getting their defense right, because if they continue to have a horrid defense like that, they shouldn't be favored in most games, because yeah, they have one of the best offenses in the league, but with them, they can beat anyone, and anyone can beat them as well, too, and that's an unfortunate thing for the Dallas Cowboys. But Rico Dowdle told the Cowboys to do this.
They got to buckle up.
And they definitely didn't buckle up, as Rico Dowdle then said this.
They weren't buckled up.
And that's the reality, as he had his second straight game as he had over 200 all-purpose yards. Rico Dowdle is the first undrafted running back in NFL history to have 2 consecutive 200 all-purpose yards games back-to-back. And the Panthers, they have a 500 record as they're 3-3, so that says a lot about them for sure. You look at teams like the Steelers coming off of a bye week, they have a 4-1 record. Leading the AFC North right now is the Ravens are now 1-5 without Lamar Jackson going into their Week 7 bye. We'll see how that division continues to trend, but man, I mean, there's just a lot of unpredictability that we didn't expect going into this season. The Seattle Seahawks, though, they're playing at a high level. Got a good win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, as they now have a 4-2 record. JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigma, is playing at a high level right now, playing as one of the best receivers in the league. That goes without saying. The Patriots just continue to find ways to win as well, too. Drake May is playing at a great level right now in his sophomore season for sure. And the Chargers, after coming off of a loss, the Washington Commanders were able to win against the Dolphins, where they really should have won by more, but ultimately still found a way to win, and that's what matters most. And then lastly, on Monday Night Football, we had a doubleheader. I love when we have doubleheaders on Monday Night Football. The first matchup that took place between the Buffalo Bills and Atlanta Falcons, and then finishing off a game that was decided by a Hail Mary in the 2024 season, but this year between two sophomore quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. So maybe not the greatest week, but there were still some good matchups sprinkled in for this NFL Week 6, and I can't wait to talk about every single one because there's a lot to take away from every single matchup, most definitely. But with that being said, though, guys, before we further the conversation and recap NFL Week 6 and talk about every single game, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram / Twitter and X at Swaggy Russ, and TikTok at Swaggy Russ 2 for shorts, reels, content, and all things of that nature as well. Also, stay tuned for every single Wednesday where we post power rankings going into the following week. So, for example, this is Week 6. So for Wednesday, we'll be doing NFL power rankings heading into Week 7 and so on and so forth. And continue to stay tuned for my NBA season previews that I've been making. I just dropped one on the Houston Rockets, so check that out as well after you watch this video for sure. But with all that being said, though, guys, let's talk about what we learned from NFL Week 6. Hey, man, so far these Thursday night football games for this 2025 season have been great, and that's a far cry from what they used to be a few years ago, because they used to be absolute shite. And we saw an upset with the New York Giants winning 34-17 over the Philadelphia Eagles, getting their second win of the season, and the Philadelphia Eagles have now lost their second straight, moving to a 4-2 record. And there's just a lot to take away from this game for sure, but I think we should start with the winning side with the New York Giants, with Jackson Dart, Cam Skadaboo, Brian Daboll. Really loving how Jackson Dart has played and his dual threat ability being on full display in that matchup, as from a passing perspective, he completed 17 out of his 25 passing attempts for 195 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. On that first possession, he had a great ball to Lil Jordan Humphrey, which ended up setting up his rushing touchdown that he had in the game. Jackson Dart just overall has been hooping, and he's been comfortable, and you've seen a lot of poise from him that we've seen in previous quarterbacks. And I'm not directly comparing him to how Jaden Daniels had an amazing rookie season in 2024 and and CJ Stroud having an amazing rookie season in 2023. But some similarities from all three of those quarterbacks in terms of their rookie years is a poise that I see. And Jackson Dart has a swagger that's, I think, a lot of people have noticed too. And he's just getting started, man. I mean, so far in his 3 starts, he's the 3rd quarterback in NFL history with 50+ rushing yards in each of his first 3 starts. The other 2 were Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. And Jackson Dart now is also the youngest quarterback in NFL history to beat a defending Super Bowl champion. And I mentioned his passing stats though, and I also mentioned the rushing stat. He had that rushing touchdown, and he had 13 carries for 58 rushing yards too. So essentially he had over 250 all-purpose yards. But also I mentioned Cam Scadaboo, who had a total of 110 yards himself, and he's been great for this roster, really emerging as now their running back 1 in his rookie year, and he's been an absolute gem, with him being a 4th round pick in this year's 2025 draft. He had 19 carries for 98 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. That offense was just humming, and then Wan'Dale Robinson had a receiving touchdown with 6 receptions for 84 receiving yards too. Mind you guys, this was all without Malik Neighbors too. So I know when we talk about the Eagles, you know, people are gonna talk about, oh, Jalen Carter didn't play, Quinyon Mitchell got injured. The New York Giants were missing a top 10 receiver in this league and Malik Neighbors too, and they still ended up winning pretty handily in this match. I mean, it just goes a lot to say about how the Giants, how they can lose a game in week 5 against the New Orleans Saints, allowing the Saints to get their first win of the year, but then 4 days later beat the Philadelphia Eagles in a divisional matchup, winning 34-17. And also with that, the Eagles before this matchup had beat the Giants 10 times in a row, and this is the first time that the Eagles have lost back-to-back games since January of 2024. So it just says a lot, and a lot of red flags that we saw from the Philadelphia Eagles now transitioning to them. Man, I will say their offense didn't start off bad in the first half. I mean, and if we get to statistics, I mean, it wasn't necessarily bad. I mean, Jalen Hurts completed 24 out of his 33 passing attempts for 283 passing yards, 1 touchdown, but that one crucial interception, which I really believe sealed the game in the 4th quarter for the New York Giants, and he missed the ball to Devontae Smith, which would have been a touchdown as well too. That looked bad. It just hasn't been beautiful, and I'm getting a lot of similar feelings to the 2023 season that the Philadelphia Eagles had then. They better get this offense, they better get this team right, and defensively they aren't what they were last year too, and that just goes without saying, I believe, as well. I mean, Dallas Goedert, yeah, he played his butt off, had 9 receptions for 110 receiving yards, receiving touchdown, but the running game continues to be inefficient, I would say. I mean, teams are not gonna let Saquon Barkley beat you after seeing how the Eagles performed last year. They're gonna make Jalen Hurts beat them from the pocket, and that's not necessarily the greatest ingredient at all for the Eagles, and it just continues to boil into frustration for players like an AJ Brown, to Devontae Smith, their playmakers overall, because this team is super talented, but they are not the Herculean team that a lot of people have predicted them to be, and potentially repeat things of that nature as well too. And that was on full display. The New York Giants got a great win, a great divisional win, getting their 2nd win of the year. And for the Eagles, man, it's time to wake up. If that's not a wake-up call, losing 2 games in a row, I don't know what is. If they lose a 3rd game in a row to Minnesota in week 7, you can sound the alarms off for sure. But it's a great win for the New York Giants and Jackson Dart in his 3rd start, getting a 2nd win in 3 starts, by the way. Now moving to the Sunday games, where we first saw the Denver Broncos defeat the New York Jets 13-11, advancing the Broncos to a 4-2 record, and the Jets are still winless with an 0-6 record. And I'm gonna be real, this was a very brutal watch from a statistics standpoint. If you look at the box score, Justin Fields only had 45 passing yards. He was sacked 9 times from that stout Broncos defense, which is one of the best in the league, headlined by Jonathan Cooper, who had 2 sacks. They were just having a feast, and it was just continued to show that Justin Fields holding on to the ball, things of that nature too as well. Also, poor clock management from the Jets that we've seen throughout the entire season, in situational football, undisciplined penalties, things of that nature too. It's just been a struggle for this Jets team, and a lot of people recognize and say that they're better than the winless team, the record that they have right now. I would agree with that sentiment to an extent, but overall, ultimately, you are right now what your record says that you are, and you're still the only team in the league without a win, and that says a lot, frankly. But for the Denver Broncos, they were ultimately able to win the game, and that's all that matters most. But it wasn't a great performance on their end, I might add. I mean, their lone touchdown came in the 1st quarter when Bo Nix found tight end Nate Atkins for the receiving touchdown. But overall, though, I mean, the offense wasn't necessarily humming at all. Evan Ingram was the leading receiver with only 5 receptions for 42 receiving yards. Rushing wise, J.K. Dobbins had 14 carries for 40 rushing yards, averaging under 3 yards per carry. It just wasn't really a lot of dynamic football at all from an offensive perspective. If you're a fan of football defensively, then this is probably your watch. Bo Nix completing 19 out of his 30 passing attempts for 174 passing yards and a passing touchdown. It just seems like the Broncos were very conservative in terms of pushing the ball downfield. But nevertheless, the Broncos got this win. The Jets still remain winless. Will the Jets be able to get their first win against Carolina next week? Who knows, man. But the Broncos, they were able to get a good win in this matchup, getting their 4th win of the year. The Seattle Seahawks got a great road win on the road in Jacksonville, defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-12. They now have a 4-2 record, and now the Jacksonville Jaguars have that same record being 4-2. Just a great defensive masterclass in this game from Seattle, having a bounce back win after losing their Week 5 matchup to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. Sam Darnold continues to play clean and efficient, completing 16 out of his 27 passing attempts for 295 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba, that's a story with the Seattle Seahawks offense so far this season. He has been dominant as their wide receiver one this year. Of course, he was a number 2 the past couple of years in his early career behind the DK Metcalf, but now he has really shined and emerged in this Clint Kubiak-led offense alongside with a Sam Darnold starting at quarterback. And in this game, Jackson Smith-Njigba continued to keep up the momentum, having 8 receptions for 162 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Cooper Kupp also had a receiving touchdown as well too. And not too much on the running game, as Kenneth Walker only had 34 rushing yards and Zach Charbonnet only had 24 rushing yards. AJ Barner has been a great contributor to this offense this year so far at the tight end position, having 3 receptions for 71 receiving yards too. So that was a really good compliment for their offense, but I think the defense was the biggest story for the Seattle Seahawks in this game, as they had 7 sacks on Trevor Lawrence and 33 pressures. That's absolutely insane. Just a defensive clinic by the Seattle Seahawks. And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he didn't necessarily play bad from a statistical standpoint. He did have to drop back a lot, and the running game was really ineffective, as the Jaguars only had a total of 59 rushing yards on the day, but Trevor Lawrence completed 27 out of his 42 passing attempts for 258 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. had a good game, having 8 receptions for 90 receiving yards and a touchdown, and Tim Patrick had a receiving touchdown as well too. But the Seahawks, they showed that they were the better team in this matchup too, and got a good bounce back win, like I said, after losing in Week 5 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when really they could have won that game as well too. But a bad interception that Sam Darnold had in the 4th quarter ended up leading to Tampa Bay winning the game on a game-winning field goal. But Seattle got a good win in this game. Jacksonville, after coming off their Week 5 win against the Chiefs, this was a worthy opponent to be up for, but ultimately the Seattle Seahawks dominated the game on both sides of the football, and their defense really showed to be one of the best in the league, and the Seattle Seahawks got a great win. This game was surprisingly close between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Miami Dolphins, but the Chargers were able to withstand the Miami Dolphins, winning 29-27, as the Chargers now have a 4-2 record, and the Miami Dolphins have an underwhelming 1-5 record now. The Dolphins, they were leading 13-9 at halftime, and it arose a lot of questions about the Chargers. Of course, they have a lot of their weapons being injured right now. Marion Hampton out with an ankle injury. Quentin Johnson as well too. Someone had to step up, and Ladd McConkey certainly did that. We know the type of rookie year that he had last year with the Los Angeles Chargers, but in this game he continues to build on that, having 7 receptions for 100 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown too. And Justin Herbert completed 29 of his 38 passing attempts for 264 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. But Kamani Vital definitely stepped up to the plate. He had 18 carries for 124 rushing yards, essentially averaging 7 yards per carry. It's a huge performance and a huge boost that this team is needed, especially with some bad losses that they had, particularly last week against the Washington Commanders. And getting this win over the Dolphins, maybe you want it to be more solidifying, especially the type of struggles that the Dolphins have had. But nevertheless though, this is a good complete win for this team, as also alongside with Ladd McConkey having 100 receiving yards, Rondé Gaskin II had 7 receptions for 68 receiving yards too, and Kamani Vital, alongside with his 124 rushing yard performance, had a receiving touchdown. So that was very beneficial to this offense to get things going. Defensively for the Chargers, after having a hot start, they've allowed 54 points the last 2 weeks, so that's certainly something that you want to clean up. Tua Tagovailoa though, he did turn over the ball 3 times, and I think that made a huge difference for the defense. Devon Achane though definitely did dominate on the running game, having 16 carries for 128 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, and Darren Waller had a receiving touchdown, continuing his emergence in Miami. But man, the Chargers defense, like I said, Chargers, they were able to make plays when they needed to, despite allowing 27 points, ultimately leading them to winning the game. Derwin James Jr. had an interception, Tony Jefferson did as well too, and Benjamin St. Just had an interception as well. So overall, the Chargers did enough to win the game. The Miami Dolphins are still struggling, and just a team that you're gonna have to watch to see if they end up trading players at the trade deadline, and ultimately if they'll make a move at the head coaching position at the end of this year, middle of this year, or something like that, moving on from Mike McDaniel. But overall, it was a good win for the Los Angeles Chargers to get back on track. This game was actually kind of strange too, between the Los Angeles Rams and the Baltimore Ravens. The Rams did win 17-3, but for a struggling Baltimore Ravens team without Lamar Jackson starting, all the defensive injuries and the defensive struggles in general, being one of the worst defenses in the league, it was actually tied 3-3 at halftime. And if you could probably say from the Los Angeles Rams perspective, Puka Nacua got hurt, things to that nature, which, okay, of course, I mean, he's their best receiver on the team. But regardless of that though, the Rams offensively and defensively, all phases of the game, they have a better team, so you would expect it a more dominant win, but they ended up winning anyways. And Matthew Stafford, I mean, he didn't necessarily have the performance that he had against the 49ers, for example, when they lost that game, but Matthew Stafford completed 17 out of his 26 passing attempts for 181 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown that went to Tyler Higbee, and the only other touchdown for the Los Angeles Rams came from Kyler Williams, as he had 13 carries for 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So not really too much to talk about from this Rams offense. From a defensive perspective though, absolutely, especially with Cooper Rush starting for the Baltimore Ravens, you you already knew that this matchup was going to be very Herculean for the Ravens to be competitive in. And Jared Verse, he had a sack. Quentin Lake had an interception. Larry Murchison had a sack as well. And they just overall were able to disrupt the offensive flow for Cooper Rush, and that prompted the Ravens to put in Tyler Huntley as well too. And overall, I mean, it's just tough without Lamar Jackson. Really, this Ravens team, regardless of whoever is the backup, this team is catered to be Lamar Jackson's squad. So as they're going into bye week for their week 7 bye, they're hoping to get Lamar Jackson back for week 8 for sure when they have to play against the Chicago Bears. But for the Los Angeles Rams though, it's a good win for them to get back on track after losing a tough overtime divisional game in week 5 against the San Francisco 49ers. But it's a great win. But it's a really good win for the Rams. If you didn't already believe in the Indianapolis Colts, it's time to start actually waking up and believing in them, because yeah, I know they struggled against the Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett was starting, but nevertheless of that, the Colts were able to win this game 31-27, advancing to a 5-1 record, and now the Cardinals have lost their 4th consecutive game after starting off 2-0. A lot of people will probably argue that the Cardinals had a fake 2-0 start anyways, but regardless of that though, the Colts, man, they just continue to find ways to win. Daniel Jones, yeah, he had a pick in this game, but he still continues to really command this offense under head coach Shane Steichen, completing 22 out of his 30 passing attempts for 212 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, just that 1 pick. Jonathan Taylor too has also been a huge catalyst and MVP, and the biggest reason why this offense too has been unlocked furthermore, freeing things up for Daniel Jones to keep defenses off balance, as Jonathan Taylor in this matchup had 21 carries for 123 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown, and Daniel Jones had a rushing touchdown as well too, as he had 5 carries for 20 rushing yards. And then just overall, there's a platoon of weapons for the Indianapolis Colts. Tyler Warren had 6 receptions for 63 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Alec Pierce had 48 receiving yards and 2 receptions, and Josh Downs had 6 receptions for 42 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown as well. So they just continue to play complementary football up there in Indianapolis, and their defense added to that as well too, as McKay Blackman had an interception, Kwity Paye had 2 sacks, and they're just overall humming as a squad. And I will say though, Jacoby Brissett, he did play solid, being one of the, I would say, the better backups in the league, completing 27 out of his 44 passing attempts for 320 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in that 1 pick. Zonathan Knight had a rushing touchdown. But the tough thing for the Arizona Cardinals, alongside with Kyler Murray already being out, Marvin Harrison Jr. was being evaluated for a concussion and missed the rest of this game. So that was tough for them. Trey McBride did have a receiving touchdown, and so did Greg Dortch. But man, for the Cardinals, man, after starting off 2-0, losing 4 straight games, especially the one that they lost against the Titans in week 5, that was just an absolute backbreaker, and things are not looking up for them right now. They play against the Green Bay Packers in week 7. That's going to be a tough matchup as well too. We'll see how things go for Arizona, but for the Indianapolis Colts, like I said, man, it's time to wake up. They're absolutely for real. They're going to be a great AFC contender for this 2025 NFL season. This game had an absolute surprising outcome, but when you really look at it and watch the game, it's not that surprising, as the Carolina Panthers upset the Dallas Cowboys, winning 30-27. They move on to a 500 record, being 3-3, and now the Dallas Cowboys are 2-3-1. I think it's just a simple thing to say the difference in this game for the Carolina Panthers. Rico Dowdle had his 2nd straight 200-yard all-purpose game, and it brings some questions in terms of how fast do you bring back a Chuba Hubbard. Rico Dowdle had 30 carries for 183 rushing yards, and then in the receiving game, he had 5 receptions for 56 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown too. So this Panthers team, they were just dominating and really just let Rico Dowdle lead the way. He said buckle up to the Dallas Cowboys, and he absolutely backed up his words. Tetairoa McMillan also had 2 receiving touchdowns in this game too. And Bryce Young, I mean, that interception that he had was Tetairoa McMillan really on him, to be honest, because he dropped the ball. But besides that, Bryce Young was pretty solid in this match. I mean, he completed 17 out of his 25 passing attempts, had 199 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Dave Canales put him in great positions and spots to be efficient and not turn over the football and be smart. So that was a good thing for Carolina, and it's a good win for them. Man, I think if you ask a lot of people how you think the Carolina Panthers would be going into week 7 of this 2025 NFL season, after 6 games, you would say probably they would maybe be like 1-5, 2-4, something like that. Nah, they're at 500, being 3-3 in their next matchup in week 7. They'll play against the Jets. They could end up being over 500 after next week in week 7. So that's a great thing to talk about with Dave Canales, how he is getting used to having Bryce Young as his quarterback. Just overall, this team played great defensively, offensively. They own the trenches. They absolutely out-physical Dallas, and that's saying a lot. But now flipping things to the Dallas Cowboys side, I think it's pretty simple to diagnose the problem for his team. Their offense is playing at a historic level, but their defense is playing at a historically bad level, and this defense is going to be the biggest thing that hampers this team. If you're Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys front office, you have to make a move. I don't know necessarily what move, but you have to make one, whether it's changing things At defensive coordinator, yes, with Matt Eberflus, I know it's crazy to say, making a defensive coordinator change in week 7, it's absolutely horrible, and they've made no adjustments. I mean, that just says a lot. Even from a personnel standpoint, the zone coverages that he runs, it doesn't match the personnel, and he doesn't put them in spots to be successful. There is an example of a 4th and 3 play where Hunter Renfrow had a wide open crosser slant, caught that, and the nearest player was like 5 to 10 yards back. I mean, that's just absolutely coaching, on my opinion. I mean, it's just terrible. It sucks for the Dallas Cowboys offense because you have to be perfect every single possession, or you know you're going to be at a disadvantage because your defense can't guard a parked car. Dak Prescott, though, I mean, he continues to play efficient football, completing 25 out of his 34 passing attempts for 261 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. I mean, the dude has had 11 touchdowns and 0 picks since the Green Bay game, and the Cowboys have only won one of those games since. I mean, that just says a lot about this team right now. And a strength of this team so far this year has been actually their running game, but like I said, the Carolina Panthers, they out-physical the Dallas Cowboys, not only from an offensive perspective, but defensively as well too, as the Dallas Cowboys only had a total of 32 rushing yards on the game. That says an absolute lot. Javonte Williams only had 13 carries for 29 rushing yards. The bright spot of this team, though, so far, at least with especially CeeDee Lamb out, who Cowboys are hopefully expecting for him to return in week 7 against the Washington Commanders, is a connection that Dak Prescott has with George Pickens. Pickens had 9 receptions for 168 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, just absolutely dominating and finding his flow. This offense is just going to have to outscore teams. It's really that simple, because the biggest takeaway from the Dallas Cowboys this season so far, at least, is that they can beat anyone, but also anyone can beat them as well too. And that's an unfortunate thing when you're having a Dak Prescott play at a great level, really the best of his career, playing at an MVP type level, but his defense, frankly, is just absolute shite. So yeah, and then Jake Ferguson had a receiving touchdown too. So did their fullback Hunter Lipke, who had the first receiving touchdown in the game. But it just overall sucks for the Dallas Cowboys. If they have any common sense, they'll make a move. I don't know what type of move, but you have to adjust something. But for the Carolina Panthers, they have a 500 record, and they were able to get a good win over the Dallas Cowboys in week 6. I know the New Orleans Saints are 1-5, but they are really not a bad football team. They've hung in there in every single game. And the New England Patriots, they were able to beat the Saints, winning 25-19, as they now have a 4-2 record after getting a great Sunday Night Football win over the Buffalo Bills. In week 5, they were able to build on that and win this game. But like I said, the Saints are not bad, and Spencer Rattler has continued to be solid for this team throughout this year so far. I know it hasn't necessarily resulted in wins except for the win that they had in week 5 against the New York Giants, but he's been solid, completing 20 out of his 26 passing attempts for 227 passing yards. Taysom Hill had that 1 rushing touchdown, and Chris Olave had 6 receptions for 98 receiving yards. But this team is not bad, man. Their defense has been respected for years for sure. Even now with this regime change, they still have players like a young Kool-Aid McKinstry who stepped up and had those 2 interceptions in week 5, but also, of course, having Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, players to that nature. They've been very complimentary for this team, even though it hasn't resulted in wins. But really the biggest takeaway from this game is that New England Patriots, being an improved team, being a team that I've said for a while is going to be an AFC wild card contender for sure. They had the potential to do that. And arguably the biggest reason why is Drake May. In this game, he joined Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Dan Marino as the only quarterbacks aged 23 or younger with 200 plus passing yards and a 100 plus passer rating in 5 consecutive games. In this matchup against the Saints, he completed 18 out of his 26 passing attempts for 261 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. That was very beneficial as the running game kind of struggled. Keyshawn Bootsy had 5 receptions for 93 receiving yards and 2 of those touchdowns. Demario Douglas had 3 receptions for 71 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown too. So just a lot of balance from this team. Their defense played well too. Marcus Jones had a sack after having an interception against the Bills the week before. Harold Landry III had a sack as well too. This team is just playing really good football right now. Mike Vrabel is continuing to hone in and add his culture and the experience that he's had as a former New England Patriots player, but also the great coaching resume that he's had as being one of the most respected and best coaches in the league, to really revitalizing his franchise. And the Patriots were able to get their 4th win of the year, moving on to a 4-2 record. After coming off of their week 5 bye, the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to continue to have some positive momentum, to further their momentum, advancing to a 4-1 record as they got a divisional win over the Cleveland Browns, winning 23-9. Just overall on both sides of the football, they continue to play well, and I think it goes without saying, especially with the struggles that the Baltimore Ravens have had, that they are in pole position to eventually win this division. I know it's a long season though, so anything can happen, especially all the Ravens need is Lamar Jackson to return and overall their team to play better. But right now, the Steelers are in the driver's seat of the AFC North, and a great reason why is Aaron Rodgers. He is continuing to play well within this offense, completing 21 out of his 30 passing attempts for 235 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. DK Metcalf had 4 receptions for 95 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, and Connor Hayward had a receiving touchdown too. Them playing clean football offensively alongside with having one of the best defenses in the league, especially from a takeaway standpoint, is just a huge reason why. I mean, shoot, Jalen Ramsey had 2 sacks in this game. Nick Herbig had 2 sacks off the edge in this game as well too. Derek Harmon had a sack as well too, and Alex Highsmith had a half sack. They're playing at a high level right now, both offensively and defensively, and like I mentioned with their offense, especially facing off the Cleveland Browns, who despite having a 1-5 record now, have had one of the best defenses defenses in the league, they were still able to have their way. And Dylan Gabriel, I mean, dang, Kevin Stefanski, you had your rookie quarterback in his second start throw the ball 52 times. That certainly is a lot. I can't really say that he played bad or good because ultimately this offense is just limited. I mean, that's just the approach with this team as well. And Quinshon Judkins had been playing well, but in this game, he really wasn't able to get anything too much going, only having 12 carries for 36 rushing yards. Harold Fannin Jr., the rookie tight end, had 7 receptions for 81 receiving yards too, but really not too much to take away from the Cleveland Browns from an offensive perspective. Defensively, they weren't really able to get too much pressure on Aaron Rodgers or make a difference, and that's the biggest reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to control this game overall from the jump and advance to a 4-1 record, playing really good football right now. Someone had to win this game, and ultimately the Las Vegas Raiders did, as they defeated the Tennessee Titans, winning 20-10, getting their second win of the season, and now the Titans are 1-5. Yeah, I mean, we can be really quick on this one. Geno Smith, he did have another interception in this game, yes, but he did enough to win. I mean, completing 17 out of his 23 passing attempts, 174 passing yards, and that 1 passing touchdown that he had to Michael Mayer, who had 5 receptions for 50 receiving yards in the absence of Brock Bowers, who I believe is one of the best tight ends in the league, even only in his second season. That was a huge thing for him to step up. Trey Tucker had 5 receptions for 70 receiving yards, and Ashton Jeanty had a rushing touchdown too. So, like I said, they were able to beat the lesser team in the Tennessee Titans, but honestly, both of these teams are pretty lesser. And now with the Titans firing their head coach, Brian Callahan, which honestly isn't surprising at all, especially the direction that this season has been going, despite that Cardinals win. Let's be real, the Cardinals really lost that more than the Titans won it. It'll be interesting to see who they eventually hire in the 2026 cycle. To me, I think Cliff Kingsbury would make sense, maybe a Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills. But yeah, I mean, this season honestly is already lost for them, but it was a great win for the Las Vegas Raiders. Like I said earlier, someone had to win the game. The Tampa Bay Bucs continue to find ways to win, and they defeated the San Francisco 49ers, winning 30-19, as the Bucs now have a 5-1 record. Unfortunately, there were a couple of injuries in this game that affected both teams, particularly with San Francisco for Fred Warner, who's going to be out for the season now. So now the 49ers have both Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, both of their best defensive players, out for the season. That sucks for them going forward. For the Bucs, Emeka Egbuka had a hamstring injury, so that's gonna linger for sure. Hopefully they get Mike Evans back, Chris Godwin as well too. But that brings up another point of saying that Baker Mayfield, I think it's unanimous that everyone feels like he's an MVP so far. There's still a lot of football to play. It's just week 6. But with that being said, though, he's playing at a great level, the best football of his career. He completed 17 out of his 23 passing attempts in this game for 256 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns that he connected with Tez Johnson on, and alongside of Cameron Johnson as well too. Even without Bucky Irvin playing, guys, too, in the running game, Rashad White still continues to hold things down, having 17 carries for 65 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And Sean Tucker had a rushing touchdown as well too. So the Bucs, they continue to find ways to win. Their defense is playing at a high level. Jamel Dean had an interception, and so did Kendall Viter. On Mac Jones, they're playing very efficient on both sides, and this team is playing like one of the best in the NFC right now. And I talked about in the intro, as there's still no definitive team that's the best in the league yet right now, but the Bucs are certainly one of those teams I think that's going to continue to linger throughout now and throughout the rest of the season and go into the playoffs as one of the best teams in the league. And for the 49ers, they still have a 4-2 record right now, but like I said, the injury bug continues to strike this team. Had a lot of injury issues last year, and they're still dealing with effects of that, and now this season it hasn't been so kind either. Mac Jones, he had been playing good football in the absence of Brock Purdy still being injured, and this game it kind of just spiraled negatively for them, especially under this Bucs defense under head coach Todd Bowles, who likes to disguise his different coverages and things of that nature too, making it difficult on them. Christian McCaffrey, he did have a rushing touchdown and had 17 carries for 54 rushing yards, but that's only averaging 3.2 yards per carry, so nothing too crazy there. He did have 57 receiving yards though as well. Kendrick Bourne, though, he continues to be a great weapon for Mac Jones, and they have a great rapport as they previously played together in New England, so that makes sense. And in this game, he had 5 receptions for 142 receiving yards. But really the biggest takeaway from this game is just the efficient play of a Baker Mayfield, who, like I said, he is leading the MVP race right now so far this season. And the Buccaneers, I know a lot of people didn't necessarily fear them as the same level of teams to be on a Super Bowl contender type of level. But I think it's time to recognize that we should be placing them there for sure, especially right now with them dealing all the injuries that they have. Now when they get their weapons back, get more healthy on offensive line, things of that nature too, they're going to be even better and trending in a great direction. So it's a great win for the Tampa Bay Bucs as they have a 5-1 record now going into week 7. Coming off their week 5 bye week, the Green Bay Packers were able to defeat the Cincinnati Bengals, winning 27-18, with them now having a 3-1-1 record. Now the Bengals are 2-4 after starting off 2-0, them losing 4 straight, similarly to like a team in Arizona after starting off 2-0. They made that trade for Joe Flacco, who honestly, he didn't play bad at all. The philosophy, the Bengals made this trade last week for Joe Flacco to have some improved quarterback play since Jake Browning struggled, was to let Joe Flacco let it rip. And he definitely did that, completing 29 of his 45 passing attempts for 219 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. One is Jamar Chase, who had 10 receptions for 94 receiving yards, and the other to their tight end Tanner Hudson, who had a receiving touchdown, and T. Higgins had 5 receptions for 62 receiving yards. So not bad for them offensively. They were able to, honestly, like I continue to say about the Green Bay Packers, this team, everyone said that they should be the Super Bowl favorite, best team in the league, things of that nature too as well too. That was a premature conversation conversation to have about them. And, you know, Jordan Love, he had an interception in this game, but I still don't think that he played that bad. Really, the interception wasn't on him. He completed 19 out of his 26 passing attempts for 259 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown that he had to Tucker Kraft. Josh Jacobs continues to be, like I have said for the past 2 seasons for sure, since he signed with the Packers, the best playmaker to this offense, as he had 18 carries for 93 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Matthew Golden had a really good game, having 3 receptions for 86 receiving yards, and Josh Jacobs, alongside of his 93 rushing yards, he had 5 receptions for 57 receiving yards too. So just a solid balanced game from them offensively. Defensively, there's still some more things to be desired. They only had 1 sack on the game. Didn't really get a lot of pressure, but the 1 sack did come from Luke Van Ness, so that was a positive thing for him. But yeah, this team though, Green Bay has to continue to play better if they want to be considered as one of the more elite teams in the league. But ultimately, they still have a 3-1-1 record, and they were able to get the win over the Cincinnati Bengals. This was a highly anticipated game for Sunday Night Football between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions, as the last time we saw these 2 teams play against each other was week 1 of the 2023 season, and the Lions won that game, but the Chiefs were able to somewhat get some revenge in this game, kind of winning 30-17, as the Chiefs now have a 500 record, being 3-3, and the Detroit Lions are 4-2. The whole scuffle at the end of the game with Brian Branch slapping Juju Smith-Schuster, I ain't gonna lie, that was wild. That was a wild team to see for sure. But anyways, we're not gonna expand too much on that because that was crazy. But the Chiefs, they were able to control this game overall, and the Lions' defensive injuries and their secondary, just in their defense overall, continued to show. Patrick Mahomes really had a feast offensively in this game, completing 22 out of his 30 passing attempts for 257 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And also Mahomes had a rushing touchdown as well too. And Travis Kelce had 6 receptions for 78 receiving yards. Hollywood Brown had 4 receptions for 45 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And Xavier Worthy had a receiving touchdown as well too. And remember guys, Rashee Rice finally makes his return in week 7. So ultimately, maybe the Chiefs season hasn't started to the fashion that they have wanted it to, but now they have the opportunity to really just to continue to go on a little run right here and get on a great winning streak. They play against the Raiders in week 7, the Commanders in week 8, Bills in week 9. That's going to be a great game for sure. They have a bye week, and then in week 11 they play against the Broncos. So they have some opportunities to string some wins together and be that team that we know is one of the most feared in the league and get them right back on rhythm. But for the Detroit Lions, I mean, overall, I don't think they played a terrible game. I just think at times the Chiefs made better plays overall, and their defense really was suffocating. And that was the biggest difference for the Detroit Lions, not being able to put as much points on the board, because I think before that game they were averaging around 34 points per game. I think they were averaging like around 33, 34 points per game for the season. That's absolutely absurd. But Jared Goff, I mean, like, he didn't play bad in this game either, and if it wasn't for an illegal formation call, he would have had a receiving touchdown for the first touchdown in the game. But he completed 23 out of his 29 passing attempts for 203 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Running game wasn't as efficient as we're mostly used to, as Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery only combined for 89 total rushing yards. Jamison Williams did have that nice receiving touchdown, as he had 6 receptions for 66 receiving yards, and that receiving touchdown. And Sam Laporta had a crazy catch for a receiving touchdown, as he had 5 receptions for 55 receiving yards on the game. But Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't utilized to the fashion that we're used to. And so overall, like I said, that Chiefs defense came to play in this game, and that was a good performance from them overall as a football team, playing complementary football, getting a great win. So I think these are easily 2 teams that we're going to see in the postseason against each other in Super Bowl. I'm not necessarily sure about that, but ultimately though, a really good matchup, and the Chiefs were able to get a good win, getting to a 500 record. And like I said, they might be going on a potential run now in the regular season, trying to win their 10th consecutive AFC West divisional title. Now we head to Monday night for the final 2 games of NFL Week 6, where we saw the Atlanta Falcons defeat the Buffalo Bills 24-14, moving to a 3-2 record. And now the Bills have lost their 2nd consecutive game, as they're now 4-2 going into their bye week. 2 words for real though from this game: Bijan Robinson, man, continues to dominate, being, you can make the argument, the best running back in the game right now. You can also mention names like, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, how he's playing right now, Josh Jacobs, players to that nature too. But I think right now at the running back position, Bijan Robinson is playing the best. He had 238 all-purpose yards, 170 rushing on 19 carries for a rushing touchdown, and receiving wise, he had 6 receptions for 68 receiving yards too. I mean, really, if you looked at the game and watched it, the Falcons controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides, offensively and defensively. Their O-line dominated. In the passing game, Michael Penix Jr. was able to be efficient too, connecting to Drake London, who had 10 receptions for 158 receiving yards and receiving touchdown. Michael Penix on the game, overall, he completed 20 out of his 32 passing attempts for 250 passing yards and a touchdown too. And then transitioning to the Falcons defense, they dominated the Buffalo Bills offensively. They sacked Josh Allen 4 times, forced Josh Allen to throw 2 interceptions in this game. And it's crazy because in the past 2 games, the Bills have had turnover problems, and the Bills had a streak before the New England Patriots lost. They had a streak of 20 games winning a turnover battle, and that ended in that last game. So, and even talking about the Bills defense too, Ed Oliver returned in this game, but the Falcons absolutely gashed them in the running game too. Tyler Algier also had a rushing touchdown in his game too. So the Falcons just showed a lot of people that the type of potential that we've been clamoring for from this team. And I still believe that the Bucs are the best team in their division and overall will win the NFC South again. But don't count out the Atlanta Falcons for being a real wild card threat. And hey, I mean, they can compete for the NFC South for sure too. But I still believe that that division is for the Bucs. And for the Buffalo Bills, honestly, this bye week for them comes at a great time. For them to ultimately reset, maybe get more healthy because they've been dealing with some injuries in their secondary. Also, Joshua Palmer got a little dinged up in this game as well too. And also, Dalton Kincaid didn't play in this game. So that also had Josh Allen without a receiving threat at the tight end position too. Ray Davis had a receiving touchdown. Austin Knox had a receiving touchdown too, him being the other tight end. But besides that though, the Falcons ultimately held the Bills offense in check, and really it was a great win for the Atlanta Falcons. I still believe the Bills are one of the best teams in the AFC, but that just continues to go along with my argument that I said in the intro, that I'll elaborate on in the outro as well too, is that there's no definitive best team in all the teams in the league. There's not really a huge separation from any of them, but it's a great win in this matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. For the final matchup of NFL Week 6, we had a great game between two sophomore quarterbacks in Caleb Williams for the Chicago Bears and Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders. And the Bears were able to win this game 25-24, winning their third game in a row, moving to a 3-2 record. And now the Commanders are at an even 500 record of 3-3. Just a telling of two halves for sure. The Commanders were able to get things back right going in the second half, in the second quarter and throughout the second half, after the Bears started off the game 13-0, forcing 2 turnovers in the first quarter alone, and overall 3 in the game, a costly one when Jaden Daniels in the fourth quarter messed up an exchange, which ultimately led to the Bears recovering that fumble and Jake Moody kicking the game-winning field goal. Ben Johnson is really continuing to press his culture onto this Bears team, and Caleb Williams is getting more comfortable in his system. In this matchup, he completed 17 out of his 29 passing attempts, 252 passing yards, his 1 passing touchdown to DeAndre Swift, who had 2 receptions for 67 receiving yards, but also Swift had 14 carries on the running game and 108 rushing yards in this matchup too. So just like similarly how the Bills were gashed on their defensive line, the Washington Commanders defensive line struggled to stop the run as well too. And also Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson has been utilizing Williams' legs more in his offense too, as he had a rushing touchdown, the first touchdown of the game. So I just like what the Bears did defensively. I believe they were able to just play complementary football as well. Like I said, Jaden Daniels was able to find a rhythm after throwing that early interception and things of that nature too. Didn't necessarily have a terrible game, but wasn't the best. He completed 19 out of his 26 passing attempts for 211 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and that 1 pick. Chris Moore had a receiving touchdown, Zach Ertz had a receiving touchdown, and Luke McCaffrey also had that nice receiving touchdown too. But I believe the Commanders, they need to get Terry McLaurin back for sure. They're still feeling the effects of that, and they need to get right. They're having a pivotal Week 7 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys on the road. That's going to tell a lot, because imagine if the Commanders lose that game, they will be under 500, having a 3-4 record. So not a great loss at all, but for the Bears, it's really a type of relieving win, especially after what happened last year when they lost to the Commanders in a dramatic fashion in that Hail Mary. So the Bears are looking nice right now. The Commanders, I still believe that they're a really good team, but they're going through some adversity for sure. But shout out to Chicago. They got a really good win off of their bye week, and they're continuing to find a good rhythm in year 1 of the Ben Johnson head coaching era. So what did we learn from NFL Week 6? That every team is mid. Nah, I'm just playing, but seriously though, there is no great team right now, and it's crazy to say that. Usually at this point of the year, there's typically always that undefeated team or that team that just continues to blow teams out, things of that nature too. There's a couple of 5-1 teams in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Indianapolis Colts. For the Bucs, they're not even healthy right now, and Baker Mayfield, that's why he's the MVP favorite right now going into Week 7, because of how he's playing and elevating others, making his playmakers better. But I still wouldn't necessarily say that they're the best team in the league right now. I mean, I guess my power rankings video, they have to be up there because just off the sheer fact that they're finding ways to win, things of that nature as well too, but they haven't been the most dominant. They've won a lot of 1-score games. Same thing with the Colts. They've looked dominant too, but they haven't beat the best teams in the league. I mean, they beat the Broncos. That was a good win, but besides that, I mean, there's just a lot of parity right now. I mean, that's just the most simplest way to say it. I hate that it's a redundant thing that I've said earlier and previously in the video, but I mean, that's just reality right now. But honestly, would we have it any other way? Do we want to know who's going to win already and just be like, yeah, these teams are playing good, but ultimately they're going to do this in the playoffs? Ultimately, we don't know right now, and we have seen a lot of great offensive play too, but a lot of bad defenses. I mean, the defenses I can name off the top that are very putrid right now: the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, there's a lot of inefficiency right now, but that's the beautiful thing about the season still being early right now. I know we're going into Week 7, but still, we still don't have a great idea of every single team, and that continues to synchronize my argument with why I'm saying that there's still no dominance in the league right now too. But that's always great. I can't wait to see in 3-4 months the playoff matchups, the playoff teams, things of that nature, and how drastically possibly things could have potentially changed, or if they're in a similar realm to how things are right now. But based on recent history, how things look going into week 7, it's never like that typically in the playoff picture. So I'm intrigued for the finish that we're gonna have overall in this 2025 NFL season, because it's been a beautiful, unpredictable one, and that's a great thing if you ask me, in my opinion. But yeah, guys, let me know in the comments down below what you learned from NFL Week 6. Like I said, a lot of parity right now. Teams are playing well, but also we just don't know who's the best. So let me know in the comments down below who you think is the best team in the league right now, and some of the things that you've taken away from NFL Week 6 for sure. But stay tuned for my power rankings video that I'll be having coming soon for sure too, going into NFL Week 7, and stay tuned for my NBA season previews videos that I'm gonna be having. There's probably gonna be some that are gonna be uploaded at the beginning of the season starting as well too, just because of time and things of that nature too. So stay tuned for this week and next week as well. But go check out my Rockets season preview if you haven't already. And yeah, just a lot more heat on the way, guys. Continue to stay tuned for sure. With all that being said though, make sure that you guys hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram / Twitter and X at SwaggyRuss, and TikTok at SwaggyRuss2 for shorts, reels, and all things of that nature. Know that you are loved, you are blessed, God loves you. He has so many great things for you in your lives to prosper you guys, and just know that I love you as well. So y'all keep being legendary, keep being the great people that you are. Love y'all, and y'all have a good one. Peace.